Your moderator, I think you are starting me off in the wrong direction when you start asking about the role of the military in politics. And I think I need to address some issues which have been raised by previous speakers here. First of all, I want to somewhat commend Councillor Jude. Among all the people who have been speaking about this matter, I find he has some objective reality. But the majority of them by far, those who have been opposing this legislation, have simply been posturing. And you can also hear here Honorable Segona, really full of cynicism when he talks about it, when he makes reference to family rule, which is very far from the truth. And this, I think this is very misleading to Ugandans. But I think Ugandans are also very wise, and they can judge what is real, what is false, and what is being projected as false narratives. First of all, I want to congratulate the members of parliament yesterday who passed this legislation, because I think they have rescued the people of Uganda.
From what?
This country was being pushed on the edge of the abyss. And I think some people joke too much.
But please,
I think,
just a second.
No, just hold on.
When we were off air, you said that in this country we generally have peace. So when you say we were almost at abyss, it's a contradiction of what you said.
Just hold on. Since the Supreme Court judgment in January and up to this point, not just civilian cases in the general court martial, and which are very few, by the way, very, very insignificant. The entire army, the entire justice system in the army has been frozen. Nothing was being done. The soldiers were in detention, just continued there. The court martials couldn't operate because the Supreme Court raised the important observations. And I think these observations in this new amendment have now been addressed. And the people, I think, who somewhat attempted to get rid of, I think, the UPDF altogether, especially those two clauses they're making reference to, I think have achieved the opposite. We have now a stronger law. I think it's going to strengthen the security systems in this country, and the people of Uganda, I think, have reason to have hope. And I will explain. So, for starters, no trials are being conducted in the army. That's a very bad thing. The UPDF, one of our core tenets, one of our strengths is discipline. This Supreme Court judgment was not just about civilians, it was also about the military. And that's why I said Councillor Jude raised some of these issues. The Supreme Court made reference to the composition of the UPDF court martials and the qualifications of members. The Chief Justice gave an analogy that it was akin to a lawyer like him going to a medical theater and conducting surgery. He gave guidance in his lead judgment, and those observations have been captured. We have made amends, we have complied with the Supreme Court guidance on how the court martials in UPDF can proceed, not only for UPDF, but even others, as they have already pointed out. The other context I want people to understand is that Uganda is a very, very volatile region. But people don't understand it, because for the last 40 years, UPDF has worked so hard to restore peace. Between 1962 and 1986, many of you here are old enough, they understand that history. UPDF reversed that course, formerly the NRA, and there has been peace. Actually, until 20 years ago, we are combating rebels in northern Uganda, ADF in western Uganda. For a long time, we have had issues in Karamoja of cattle rustlers. There was completely no peace in that part of the region. Therefore, what am I saying? The UPDF, using its many strengths, including discipline, has established discipline, restored peace. Now, and so many things, you know, nothing can take place if there's no peace and security. This is there for everyone to see. Why do some people want to change the status quo? If there is peace, if something is working, why do you seek to change it?
Exactly. So if the penal code has been working, why do you want to change it?
The UPDF Act, our standards of discipline are well known. We have always come strong against our own, until I think also started 20 years ago, we used to execute people on the firing squad for capital offenses like murder, like rape, armed robbery, and so on. And actually, those rules were still there. In the current amendment, only the General Court Martial can impose a death sentence, for instance. But even then, it cannot be executed until certified by the Supreme Court. So what is the worry? This law has been made better to accommodate all the fears.
How has it been made better if there is a penal code that has all those crimes you're talking about, from terrorism to murder to rape? How has it been made better? You are the prosecutor, the investigator, the one administering justice. Where is the independence?
The reason I earlier on say that some people joke too much. Right now, we have operations going on in Eastern Congo against ADF. And those are Ugandans. So Honorable Segona here and the Council Jude and my elder sister there are suggesting that we should capture ADF combatants who take in civilians and we bring them here to some random civilian judge to attend to. It's quite intriguing. We have been working very hard to restore order.
You did pick Jamil Mukulu from Tanzania, brought him here. He's in a civilian court.
It was really under different arrangement. It was an extradition, and I don't want to go there.
Jude recommended that the military court can be part of the High Court.
Let me say this. These lawyers here, they have their own internal disciplinary processes. When one of their own goes contrary to their professional ethics, isn't it so? And all professions, whether in medical or anywhere, they do. How can you say that the UPDF, the National Army, the institution mandated to ensure our national security around the clock, cannot take decisive action against people who threaten this country? We must be able to do that. And I think it's the right thing that this law has been approved and we're able to do it. A lot of reservations have been raised about the exceptional circumstances, which some people seem to suggest are not exceptional. What is not exceptional about a civilian undergoing military training and equipping themselves with lethal weapons like ADF now? They have been here, they have carried out bombings, they have assassinated some people. what is not exceptional about such a character to come and appear in the court martial if they have voluntarily taken up arms? So I think we need to be serious. The politics is fine, but I think when it comes to issues of security, I think they should leave the security services to do their work without interference. I think it is good for the people of Uganda. It will enhance security in this country, and everything else will be able to take place.
Let me hear from Honorable, okay. And lastly, Dr. Sarah, before we take a break.
Thank you. To our viewers and to my fellow panelists, we need to know what we are dealing with. The law is about Uganda People's Defense Forces. We are dealing with an army, and an army that has to be disciplined. We are dealing with an army, in this case Uganda People's Defense Forces, whose discipline is a cornerstone of stability and security for this nation. If it is not disciplined, or if it's not disciplined enough, then we see chaos like we have seen in previous armies.
But Honorable,
let me finish.
Question is,
but this army must have capacity to discipline itself. If you deny them that capacity to discipline itself and you start outsourcing it, then you are in trouble. What did we do to give them the ability to discipline itself, first and foremost? Two, and most importantly,
why include the civilians?
Absolutely. Why do we include civilians? Those civilians who willingly take up the weapons that are otherwise a preserve of the army, or who accompany the army to do illegal activities, then they cannot hide in the clothes of civilians.
Do you see that this act has been weaponized politically?
Well, that is now politics. But I don't deviate me. Let me finish my point. Having talked about the discipline of the army, importantly, it is also important to note that, and I'm happy my colleague acknowledges it, the honorable members of parliament on the committees of legal and parliamentary affairs, on defense and internal affairs, we have burnt midnight candles. We have virtually not slept. We have done excellent work. You cannot reduce it to only 2 clauses. Let these people watching us, let the veterans, let the maimed, let people without legs and arms who went to fight for this country, let them know that we have delivered an excellent piece of legislation for them. Okay. Let them know that their pension is good. Let them know that they now have an independent medical board within the UPDF that shall cater for their health care. Let them know that we have changed in Schedule 7 calculation for their pension different from public service. Why? Because that was disadvantaging them. Let them know that they now can determine when to retire and what to go home with. Let them, and I'm happy, true, Honorable Medad Segona Lubega from Busiro moved this amendment. Okay. And I'm happy, and I praise him for that. I acknowledge his efforts in the committee, that those people who were reduction in force of the 90s, that was as a result of IMF arrangements, and did not take home anything, should benefit now that the economy is better.
Thank you,
This is what we have delivered in this law. It is not, and for the 2 clauses, it is for purposes of fortifying UPDF's ability to discipline itself and keep us safe and secure.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah, you had some comments to make before we take a break.
You know, as Afande Magezi was submitting, you know, the language he used, and you know, Ugandans, for the biggest part of President Museveni's leadership, have known the UPDF as the People's Army. The UPDF used to score higher, even more than police, in terms of people's preference. But the new character of UPDF in the last 2 years is shocking to many Ugandans. If you talk about their conduct regarding torture and human rights violations, and it's good now they are in the open, even they publicize their victims with their pictures and how far they are going with the torture. This is not the army that Ugandans knew and loved. On the issue of saying every discipline must have its own, every profession must have its own procedures. Even the police has tribunals, but they don't include civilians. When you say lawyers have their procedures, do they include the clients? No. If engineers have, every profession indeed has, but it's restricted to that profession. It does not involve non-members. So when you go to the, and I want to draw Honorable Kajwenji to the case of Olivia Rutai and others, who spent 4 years in court martial, only to be forgiven because they agreed to work with NRM, then sentenced to 3 months, also got a presidential pardon, express presidential pardon. Were they a threat to this country? And Olivia Rutai and others, they recently got a presidential pardon, spent 4 years on trial. These are NUP supporters, arrested for terrorism charges. 4 years in prison. Then they said they, through Baram, they agreed to cooperate with NRM. Then were sentenced to 3 months, terrorism. And after one week of sentencing, they got express presidential pardon, and some of them were even told to meet the president. Were they a threat to this country?
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Let me read some feedback.
Yes.
Let's first read
because
some
you
feedback.
think you are legislating for security of this country, forgetting the politicization and weaponization and victimization of opposition in this country.
Okay.
Whether we take the directives or advice of the president
Or the electorate.
or the electorate. Simple. We are guided by the president because majority of the electorate voted for him. 1, 2, but they also voted for us. And when we meet in the caucus as NRM, he's our chairperson. And he gives guidance, and it's not directives. We discuss in there. None of you has been a member of that caucus. We have disagreed with our chairperson on many occasions, and he gives in. He has guided us what is right, and we follow. Yes, as a party, we are duty bound to hear from our leader.
Thank you. Jude, let me come to you before I come.
I had a question for Honorable Kajwenji. Olivia Rutai and others were charged with terrorism by the military court martial. Spent 4 years on remand in court martial. When they later signed a memorandum with the Honorable Baram agreeing to cooperate with NRM, they were sentenced to 3 months. Terrorism. And forgiven after the sentence by the president. Do you think they were a threat to this country?
I don't know the particulars of the Olivia.
Their lawyer is here.
Oh, well, I really don't know the particulars to that. I would be doing a disservice to myself and the viewers if I commented on it. What I know, however, is that the president, as a fountain of honor, has capacity to forgive. You know, in fact, that is even in the Constitution. If they use that constitutional provision to ask for clemency he did it as the head of state.
Can I make just a small
Yes.
observation on that point raised by...
Colonel, I'm going to come back to that one because their lawyer is next to you, so I'll ask the questions and he'll give an input. But let me first come to Jude. Jude, especially when you look at the grounds that this could be taken to court. Already the opposition, Right Honorable Joel Sejuni has said, we're going to court. Dr. Sarah Viret has said, we're going to court. How do you see it playing out?
Well,
and on what grounds?
No, what is pretty obvious, I don't think the grounds are very difficult to tell because we have a whole clause, 117A, which clearly is unconstitutional. There are no two ways about it because the clause which was rejected by the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court agreed that that clause was invalid, basically was reenacted and more clauses added into it. So obviously, that one can't survive.
No, Chris says they strengthened.
So
they strengthened
they committed more crime.
Yes. So that cannot survive. There's no doubt about it. That cannot survive. And maybe just to correct an impression, you see, there's professional discipline. It's not only the military which needs professional discipline. And it is true, like Colonel said, even lawyers will have law counsel. But you see the kind of misconduct over which I can be taken to law counsel. If I'm driving recklessly and I knock someone and run away, you won't take me to law counsel because I'm a lawyer. That's a civil matter. I'll be taken to Uganda Road. If I have a client and I eat his money, then I'll be taken to law counsel. But also that client can report me to police because theft is still a criminal offense. Okay? And that's the same even for medical doctors, that's the same for whether architects, for all professionals, because professional discipline has to be there. So that is why even the Supreme Court could not say that a court martial cannot exist. Because yes, there is military discipline, must be there. The problem that we have is that we are mixing up military discipline with the general body of criminal law for the entire country. That is the fundamental flaw in the way we have set up the court martial and our military system of justice. Instead of focusing on discipline, we are adding in people who should be outside it. And then again, even for members of the defense forces, there are those offenses for which they should go to civilian courts, but they are again being told, no, you stay in the military system. And yet, I'm sure if Kano has a land dispute with a fellow colleague who is a member of the armed forces, I don't think they will take that within the military system. They will go to the civilian courts. The distinction which needs to be, which viewers need to understand and which our decision makers need to understand is that military discipline is important, fair enough, that's not in dispute. And it's important that the court martial is able to operate. Yes, it is true that between January and now they have had those challenges for military discipline, that is also true. But to try to extrapolate it and make it about civilians and make it about creating a parallel system that works alongside the civilian system is a very big mistake. Because now the way that it is designed, a person can be charged for murder before the court martial or the civilian court. And the distinction is blurred. Because if you kill someone with a gun, even if just an ordinary robbery, aggravated robbery, you steal a pistol somewhere, you shoot someone dead. Technically, you can go to the court martial, but you can also be tried by the civilian court. And truth be told, the majority of violent crime in this country, even involving unlawful use of firearms, is handled by the judiciary, not the military. And it is not correct to assume that the military is more efficient at handling those cases. The military would have an interest if it is members of the defense forces who are involved. But we have lots of, if you look at the statistics for violent crime, for people charged with murder, people charged with aggravated robbery, there are so many who illegally use firearms. If all of those cases were to be sent to the court martial, I'm very sure even the court martial would get overwhelmed and they would never be able to manage them. And therefore that creates a temptation of them deciding who can go to the court martial and who can't. Because the law has not made that distinction, it becomes now a policy decision. of whom should we target. And that is where those temptations of weaponization of politics come into play. Because they are going to say, if Dr. Sarah Birete unlawfully uses a firearm, has shot someone, that one can stay in the civilian court. So Mole Katanga is tried for murder before a civilian court. But
She's
technically,
using the
under this
military
amendment,
Yes.
Mole Katanga could be tried in the court martial
Yes.
because of the allegation in the indictment. And therefore, that for me is a problem that needs to be corrected one way or the other. We don't want these good aspects of the law, which are important, to be affected. We don't want them to go away. But we need to continue to have candid discussions on those provisions about military discipline and how they are distorting criminal justice in the country.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah, let me come back to you. When you look at 2026, a few months away, the NRM will be beginning their primaries, the National Unity Platform, DP. When you look at this law, and you look at the general elections, and you look at the public that is outrightly, by the messages, in outrage, what do you make of our elections come 2026?
Well, going by the last by-election in Kawempe, where the army drove members in an urban constituency, including through a polling station. By the way, Ugandans are very scared of elections, and they are not looking forward to this election because of military violence. When you talk to people in whispers or whatever it is, Ugandans are very scared. The more we escalate military violence against the people and think that NRM can only keep power through intimidation and fear, the more problems you are creating, not only for the country, but for yourselves. And I don't know whether you reflect on some of these decisions and actions that you do. So when you look at the general atmosphere, you know, in politics, timing is everything. In the last elections, the military court-martial and the army was a very busy place for NUP supporters. NUP supporters from Karangara, NUP supporters from Kampala, all those children, they are rotting in jail for no crime other than supporting Bobi Wine. And that's why 5 years down the road, you cannot even try them because you have no offense. It's political weaponization. And I'm sure even Honorable Kajrenj, even if you say you don't know Olivia, I'm sure you live in this country.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure you know these atrocities of the NRM weaponizing the military court against opposition. I'm sure you are aware. Whether it politically suits you today or not, that I'm sure that in your consciousness you are aware about these atrocities and you know that it is not right. So for you people to legislate for a situation that can create genocide in this country, and you think you are creating stability by creating a weapon, you wait for the NUP supporters that will be in Makindi. Even now you can get data as parliament. When you are looking for those that can't be traced, you know even those who were traced, where they were found. They were found in Makindi. Citizens, young people. And then you sit and say, because we have the numbers, if the president wants the law, let's give it to him. So you are not legislating for the country. When Honorable Segona says you are legislating for the president, he's not far from the truth. Because who wants this law? Who is interested in trial of civilians in court-martial? What mischief are you treating as a lawyer? What mischief were you treating? Are we lacking competent courts to try cases? If the War Crimes Division can try Koyero, can try Jamir Mukuru, can try the Mumbere of Kasese, so what other war situation are you talking about? Why didn't Mumbere go to court martial? You said you discovered the arms in Kasese. Why didn't you charge him in court martial? Why did you take him to a civilian court? Why? And what justification do you have to take young children supporting Noop to court martial because of a red beret? And that's what you are legislating for, and you expect citizens to clap for you. Honorable.
No, we made the distinction
Let me come to Honorable
in
Segona.
the law.
Honorable Segona, I see you in a disposition that,
He's very depressed.
that we need counseling.
Well, I worry about this country. And I want to join Chris Magezi in celebrating the history of the army and mourn the fall of discipline in the UPDF. He's talking about discipline. If discipline means turning the military headquarters in Mbuya into a scene of crime where you torture people from, then we cannot join in celebrating discipline in the army today. If discipline in the army means that your CDF can refer to the former deputy CDF as a buffoon and he gets away with it. If discipline in the army means that your CDF can threaten to kill anybody he wants, I will kill Bobby Wine, I'll kill Erweru if he doesn't use these small legs to run away. Then he tells Uganda Human Rights Commission's chairperson, Maria Muangadia, those people did not appreciate the lives we gave them. When this country was ushering in the regime, Mohoz was in primary 4, but he gave lives to those people serving in government institutions. Chris Magezi is a spokesperson for the CDF, right?
He's now the acting Director of Defense Public Information.
I congratulate him for the time he is still there. He's the, Mohoz as CDF was the first person to have a spokesperson. And for me, I celebrated that, thinking maybe we are going to have some sanity. He has the courtesy, the audacity to tell us about discipline in the army. I want discipline in the army. I am a beneficiary of a professional army. I am a beneficiary of the services they are supposed to offer. Now you can blackmail us with threats of insecurity. You heard him speaking about judges in a very, very condescending way. You get a random judge to hear that. You see, the problem that our army now suffers is an exaggerated sense of self-importance. Thinking because they hold the gun, they are the askaris outside, they can hold us at ransom. They are a more important institution than the rest. I agree with Chris Magezi when he says, let the army do their work. I will not only let you do your work, I will even facilitate you to do your work by paying taxes, by appropriating your budget so that you do your work. I am attaching one condition. Let the other institutions work. Ugandans took a decision, and that is if you respect us anyway. We took a decision as a country that we shall be governed by the Constitution. We gave specific powers to specific institutions, and that's the doctrine of separation of powers people have been talking about. We gave the duty of adjudication to the judiciary, constitutionally. We gave the duty of legislation to Parliament. But our powers, our legislative powers, are not absolute. They are subject to the Constitution. That's why this law, which was struck down, was made by Parliament, by us. In 2005, the members of Parliament who were there made this law, which two courts, actually 3, even in Amon's case, separately, have said was unconstitutional. The only thing we have learned from the past is not learning. For us, we don't learn. Look at this law. Somebody says, you wear a Kaunda suit It's an offense. The shoe that is in this schedule is just like yours. I think the difference is that the other one has shoelaces. I'm sure that's why he's the only one putting on shoes with shoelaces. We are scared of everything.
It's military stores.
Yes, it is a military store. But just a shoe, black shoe, is a problem. I said we can help them reform this law. There are certain things that we were agreeable to. I mean, what business do I have with a uniform like his? I made a choice that I will not join the army. Why? It's my choice. I will not give you reasons today. But one of them is that you do not respect talent. You look at family rule. And I repeat what I said. You have turned our army into a family army. How can you have a serving military officer discussing, debating, engaging in partisan politics on a daily? What kind of discipline are you going to learn if your boss behaves like that? And I feel for you people, especially this young generation of ours. Let's look at this law. Where you say aiding and abetting a military officer. The court has told you that does not turn somebody into a soldier so as to be subject to your discipline. He talked about the law. I mean, if I find Chris Magezi, for example, masquerading as a lawyer, drafting plaints and signing and filing them, we will not take you to law council. That will not bring you into our discipline. We shall simply take you to police. But look at what they're doing. You're messing up and you're destroying our country. That's why you're so depressed. You have just arrested a police officer. And this is where I talked about destruction of institutions in this country. A police officer is summoned by his boss, the IGP. Report to base. The man reports from duty. He's on duty in Mbarara, on parliamentary duties, where you assigned him. He reports to police headquarters. The man, your officer disappears from your hands. You hand over. Then after 6 days, you say, now these people took our man. We can't find him. You invade the police station in Luwa, and nothing happens. I mean, we may be subdued. I mean, we gave you our guns. We made the mistake of handing over all the guns to you. Now we are helpless. But it does not mean we are stupid. We can't understand. Now, you are talking about Karamoja, where you have massacred so many people. Who said you cannot get those people from Karamoja, hand them over to civilian courts, and they administer justice? It has happened before. I think colleagues have mentioned the statistics. The court tells you, and you tell me for you follow the law. The court tells you no. Any offense that is a preserve of the civilian courts, don't touch it. You even increase the number of offenses. So now we are going to take them over. You have literally conducted a coup against the country. If we had the ability, we would be arresting you. But we do not have the ability. We are subdued. You talked about establishing courts under Article 129, but it doesn't stop there. Actually, the Constitution requires everybody, every institution of state, to give aid and assistance to ensure that decisions of court are honored and implemented. It's in the Constitution. Instead, what these people do is we will abuse it. Now, Genome 7 calls people. I think my brother Kajuenje is also very conservative with the truth. We have all the information that this time round when they reached Entebbe, the man simply opened his former big eyes and told them, don't joke with this one. If you think you're smarter than me, you're going to see. They are members of the NRM who had agreed that they are going to actually agree with us. Throw out these two clauses. Man, after Entebbe, they disappeared. And when we asked them what happened, the man is not tough but rough. He's rough this time. He said, you're going to see blood.
But I think it is better that you listen to me, who was in Entebbe.
No, but I don't trust you. If you can go ahead and sacrifice Ugandans for expedience, I don't trust you. Actually, Kajwenje, I cannot even ask you about anything that happened in Entebbe. You may find I actually know what happened in Entebbe more than you, because you were timid. You were not freely thinking and watching what was going on.
Were you in Entebbe, Honorable Second?
No. My feelers were in Entebbe because I was interested in everything that was taking place.
Okay.
You know, and by the way, while I blame the president, you people have also turned the State House into a scene of crime.
Okay.
Because when you go there and plot, okay, you go there to plot and conspire against the country, you turn that place into a scene of crime. If I had the power, I would be seeing who enters there. The broke will not enter there. The timid will not enter there.
The broke.
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable. Let me come to Colonel Chris. Colonel Chris, you spoke about discipline, and very many examples have been given. And this law, you say, is there to help really reinforce the discipline. The loopholes in there.
Would you permit me a second?
Yes.
The Chief Justice, in his lead judgment, which with the concurrence of the rest said, the desire to maintain discipline in the army is not justification for invading the territory of the judiciary in taking over the jurisdiction of courts.
Yeah.
Interesting. With the examples given, how does this enforce the discipline that already seems like it's lacking?
Thank you very much. I think there are a number of issues
Yes.
I need to respond to, and I will touch on each of them briefly, some of them, not all of them. Ms. Berete made repeated reference to Olivia Lutaya, who was in incarceration for some time. And, but from my general observation, I think that is an illness in the entire justice system in this country, across the board, not just the military. There are many countless cases, especially capital offenses, where people have been on remand for many years, even more than 4 years. Some actually are on remand for a long time, bigger than the punishment they would have got if they had been convicted in time by our courts. And you are saying that in addition to all that, we should add on, like you said, Karamoja. Do you know how many people we are talking about in Karamoja? Cattle rustlers, armed warriors, who we confront every day, and we are talking about thousands who have appeared in the court-martial in Karamoja over the years. And the Karamoja, for the first time in the whole history of the world, has some peace and some development has been taking place. In 1963, President Obote famously, or Prime Minister at that time, that the rest of Uganda would not wait for Karamoja to develop. The story is dramatically different as we speak now. In fact, for the last 10, 15 years, because of the interventions by UPDF and majorly by the court-martial system. We have dealt with those armed Karamojong, many are in jail, and Karamoja is peaceful. I think that's a good thing. So the issue of Urutaya and the others being in intention for it's a general problem.
And narrow the conversation, because they're not just Olivia Lutaya. There are 49 in 2021 that were arrested, released. There are 16 that were released.
But I'm talking of thousands in Uganda
Yes,
prisons.
but let's narrow it, because now the discussion is around the general court-martial and civilians.
Now, the second point I wanted to make about professional discipline, and I think this is where we make the mistake. The army cannot be compared to lawyers, to medical people, and so on. The army, all over the world, by the way, if you mishandle the army, you are literally playing with the fire. There are two things which could happen. One is you have a strong professional army, like the UPDF now, which respects the rule of law by and large. He's smiling, but he knows that's the truth.
I'm not smiling, I'm
Really?
laughing at you.
So, by and large, we are a law-abiding institution.
Really? With a basement?
And by the way-
first teaching of
And,
Runyankore.
and by the way, let me say this. I think the issues are just around here, Kampala. The rest of the
No,
country,
you respond to the teaching of Runyankore in the basement.
the rest, I will come to that. The rest of the country is peaceful and doing very well, by the way. Just some few isolated cases here in Kampala and maybe the greater metropolitan Kampala and maybe some few other urban centers, but mainly here. And even then, it's not really a very big problem. Some isolated cases. And those ones, as the security services are aware and are going to deal with it, and Kampala will also be calm and peaceful. So I was saying, before you throw me off balance, that so
That what?
one scenario is a competent army like ours, which has maintained peace here, and you are able to do all your businesses, all the other services in Uganda are taking place, education, health, people are doing trade, and so on. The opposite would be a wayward institution, like we have seen in Uganda before, and even in other parts of Africa currently, where there is completely no respect of the rule of the law, and you will not find clever people like Ms. Birete and our councils here discussing anything. They simply disappear and fuse into exile, and the country continues. The worst case scenario is the situation pertaining in most of Congo. Government is simply absent. There is no army to talk about in the first place.
The context there is completely different. Let's base
So-
on here.
So that I was driving to the point.
No, whatever achievements he's talking about, we worked for it. We worked for it.
I was making the point that we have to be very careful when we are talking about the military. It's comparing oranges and mangoes. We have to be very careful. Otherwise, we will burn our fingers. And it will be bad for everyone,
Sounds
including me
more of
and
a
others.
threat than really.
This is the reality. This is the reality. And we have to face it. For instance, my appeal would be, especially for young people. He has talked about many noob supporters. But we are not mad people. Why have we not come to arrest you?
Why do you behave like mad people if you are not mad?
Why have we not come to arrest you, Honorable?
It is your choice.
No.
Do I know when you're coming?
No, it is because, by and large, you are complying with the law. And this law now, which has been amended and passed,
Maybe because I know Runyankore.
I would,
Okay.
I would argue that
Colonel Chris,
they need to comply with it. Because
let me ask a simple question. A journalist was beaten a few years ago just downtown. Today he can't do anything by military officers. The last elections, there was shooting by military officers.
And
The
they,
num-
they better put
and
journalists.
this was
the
people
army.
recording cameras and were shooting at them.
Yangweso,
We leave
when
that.
they beat a journalist in Kawempe, his boss tweeted and said,
I will
looking
promote
for this
you."
one, for this soldier who did
Is
that.
that the discipline
didn't
you
want
are
to go
talking
there.
about?
I wanted
No,
to
but
give-
that's why you should
I also
go.
wanted to go to Lubowa because I know the gist of Lubowa and what really transpired there. A car is parked. People are there. A person is called. These people go to report the case. The soldiers are commanding the police to take them in custody. The police is saying, under what charges? Reinforcement is brought. It is not the first time. Soldiers have gone to the temple of court and picked people deliberately. Drones were moving during Kawempe and picking up people. When you talk about discipline, are you really laughing in the faces of Ugandans? Because you talk about Congo, we don't want to go there. We don't want to talk about Somalia and the looting.
It's not my
don't want to go-
country.
We want to talk about here. What enforcement, or is just this laughable on what you're talking about, security?
Let me bring this out. There is a context to all this, and it is the politicians to address this as well. Lately, or in the recent few years, we have had an upward spiral of really hate language being propagated by some politicians, incitement of violence. Even members of the security services like myself have been directly threatened. You've been, I'm sure you've come across these clips in many forums, especially on social media.
So is this law curing that?
There is a dangerous environment, and that's why I'm appealing to all stakeholders, really, that this is what we need to address. It is at the bottom of the issues here.
Tell me one person who has ever threatened to kill Muhoozi before he threatened to kill Chapman.
Honorable Wade, you were talking of one issue that is causing many issues. There is poverty, there is unemployment. Those are all issues causing insecurity. You're answering them with an act.
Violence?
You're answering them with an act to solve a problem that has ramifications that are many.
Listen, at no point have I said that, or have I argued that the UPDF is perfect. In fact, that's why I've been repeatedly
You've
making reference.
insinuated it's perfect.
Not at all. In my opening remarks, I said discipline is one of our core values and accounts, I think, by far for our greatest success wherever we have been, here and in the region. Discipline, firm discipline against our own. Where they have always erred or made mistakes, we have always taken action, and a decisive action, and sometimes very severe, like in the case of very many years in jail, which I think has also been a point of discussion, and even death. And these amendments have been made now. But I'm talking about, for instance, people projecting themselves as military, threatening others. You know, these days, I'm sure Honorable should be aware, people can no longer put on yellow on the streets of Kampala because they fear to be assaulted.
I was with him yesterday. He was putting on an ugly yellow T-shirt.
That is not true, and you know it.
You were there.
You have no idea
You know
about
it.
what is ugly about yellow and what is bright. It's not your color.
Yes,
and that environment is completely tense for everyone, and we
That's why
cannot
you
accept.
want us
What
to
is
put
the
on red
solution?
because yellow is not.
What is the solution?
Let us go to politics, which are civil, of common sense,
So that's why you're enforcing discipline enough.
In the basement.
of patriotism, of tolerance. We have had a senior political leader, not even one, I think several, openly calling for undemocratic means to capture power in public, mobilizing young people, and some are good enough and have ended up in that trap. Why are we pursuing that
So
kind
you
of
have pursued
politics?
that one.
Why are we pursuing that kind of politics? Where we deliberately mislead young people?
Is the army partisan?
Not at all.
Can the army salute any other president that comes into power?
Absolutely. That's the constitution.
So, if that is it, what is the problem with taking an army officer who has murdered before a high court with evidence for him to receive fair, independent, and competent justice?
And what's wrong with us?
You are the prosecutor, the investigator, and you deliver the justice.
The Supreme Court made reference to those points, and the amendment has just addressed them. And that's why I said that law is now stronger, it's more efficient, and it's going to help us deliver justice even better. because all the issues they raised have been addressed. Not only for the civilians who are under contention, but
What
even
issues
for
have
our
been
own.
addressed?
Because even the UPDF members are also Ugandans. They deserve
The Supreme
fairness.
Court said you can't charge offenses which are chargeable in other courts. Have you included those charges in your new law?
I'm not into those intricacies.
No.
I thought you'd
you
be
have
asking
addressed.
you as a member of parliament, because for him, the law has just been given you. Have you actually included them? Honorable
You
Medal
brought that
Segona.
law.
Honorable
We
Segona, let's,
surrounded Parliament to ensure it goes through.
No.
Honorable, let's let Kano complete his submission. Please complete.
So,
But he promised to tell me about what they did to Mohoz for engaging in partisan politics and threatening to kill and violating rights of other people. He puts in his basement.
so,
He has not answered.
so
I'm waiting.
my appeal was, let the, especially young people and especially here in Kampala, let them not be misled. Let them observe the law. You are talking about if someone is found drafting
Plaints and
a plaints or
found
something, and they are not a lawyer, how would it look if I was to dress in priestly robes and carry my machine gun and come to patrol the streets? I'm sure
You would not be disciplined in the church.
no,
The
but
church-
they would certainly
the church will
they would
not
certainly
discipline
be
you.
concerned.
The church has
They
no
would be
disciplinary
concerned.
mechanism.
No, the church has a disciplinary committee. They will not discipline you.
No, but they would
Honorable,
be
please allow
concerned.
the Kano to
He asked
complete.
me.
But they will be concerned. So, but the difference is that the
They
army,
take you where you
the
belong.
army is talking about deadly weapons. I asked here a question earlier. What is not exceptional about a so-called civilian who undergoes military training, gets equipped with deadly weapons, and comes and murders people, or kills people, or engages in any other crime, or aggravated robbery and so on, or rape, as is happening, by the way. Not so much here in Uganda because the security systems are strong, but in many other places around the continent. What is not exceptional about that person appearing in a court of law legally, as the case
Actually,
might
the
be here in
exceptional
Uganda?
cases, Chris, for your benefit, that the Chief Justice was referring to, is that there would be cases where actually he went ahead and qualified it and said where there are no functional civil courts. And I was helping, you remember, I was helping. I said, we can even provide for them. For example, someone has accompanied the army in Somalia, in Congo. They are on the front line. There is no possibility of our soldiers abandoning the front line to bring this person back to be charged in Uganda. Those are the exceptional cases. They were not about talking about exceptional offenses or matters, facts constituting offenses. Situations where the courts in Uganda are not in a position or they are not functional in that particular part. But once courts are here and are functional, the Supreme Court said, don't proceed to the court-martial.
Okay. Gentlemen.
Can I make a quick
Yes.
rejoinder? Just for your information. Since July 2020, I think 2023, when we launched the disarmament operation in Karamoja, because there was an upsurge again after about 10, 15 years since the conclusion of the disarmament operation that time in 2009. In the last 2 years, we have arrested over 26,000 in Karamoja alone now, in the Karamoja sector, 26,000 armed Karimojong warriors using guns to attack their neighbors, even raiding across the border and even across regions. 26,000. Many have been charged and convicted. They are serving sentences. Many now, 26,000. We are already talking about a judiciary which is overwhelmed by thousands of cases long behind schedule. and they cannot be heard. And yet we have an urgent security problem to deal with in Karamoja.
Okay.
And you are saying that all that should hold, the people can continue committing crime
No.
and so on. Because what happens?
Take us more serious. Nobody has said that.
No, listen. But what happens is the civil courts, bail, detention, they are released, they go back and commit crime. The same people.
Okay.
But we are dealing with that situation.
Yeah, maybe
just a quick comment before we make closing remarks.
You see Kano's point. Even if we look at Karamoja sub-region, just specifically, the civilian courts, if you give them the infrastructure which the military has, they'll also do the same work. And in fact, I know for sure that over 100 of some of those warriors, some I think had crossed over, they were Kenyans from the Turkana region, some were minors, and they were still eventually, some were released still through the courts because they had pleaded guilty and things like that. But what's important, you see, Kano, the civilian judiciary is also able to work when it is facilitated. And I know for the division court marshal which sat there to be able to process all of those cases, they also did something that was a bit unusual. And even the judiciary generally, there are those special cases when, if for example there's a problem that's unique to a region, you can ask the judiciary to also provide special attention to that region. And I mean, if there are people with firearms,
the judgment of the Chief Justice.
Yes, and it happens all the time. For example, you'll find that the judiciary has sessions for sexual offenses in various parts of the country. And then they go and address them. They'll have a session for land disputes. And then they go and handle them. So the issue is, the advantage that the army had is they were funded to go and do it. They had the capacity in terms of you have personnel, you provide security. So if the judges have the security to go and camp in Moroto and a beam and a Kapiripiti, they will get the job done.
Okay. Thank you. Let's have closing remarks. I'll start with Dr. Sarah, Council Jude, Honorable Segona, Colonel Chris, and lastly, Honorable Kajren.
Well, on the contentious issue of trial of civilians in the military courts, I wish it was possible, you know, to charge these MPs in individual capacity for contempt. The 197.
Start with Segundo.
No, the 197.
I rejected this thing.
The 197 that voted for those clauses. I wish it was possible to drag them in individual capacity for contempt of court to the Supreme Court. And they personally answer for their crimes.
But that's your wish.
As a country,
She said.
as a country, I think we need to understand that taking one step forward and 5 steps backward won't benefit anyone. We made a reasonably good constitution in 1995. We have played all sorts of games with this constitution to the extent that now it's inconsequential. We are punishing ourselves as a country. Unfortunately, the people who are not part of these decisions are the ones who will pay a higher price. I wish for a day when we shall have progressive leaders that work to take the country forward, but not the zigzag that we are experiencing.
Thank you very much. Council Jude.
So obviously, it's when we look at the events and the manner in which this UPDF Amendment Act was passed, it should give us considerable concern about constitutionalism and the rule of law and the militarization of the state. I think it's important for us to go back to first principles, which sometimes I think you forget. You know, in the Constitution, we still have that article, is it 220, which says the military will be subordinate to civilian authority. And that principle is important for various reasons. The first reason is that the idea is that not all of us should be permitted to have firearms, because the military should have them on our behalf, protect us and protect the country. And therefore, we the civilians who have said, okay, we shall not have arms and all, because the military should have them. The military should listen to us. But I think that principle has been turned on its head, and it's becoming that because we are powerful, we have firepower, you don't have it, we must take the lead. We are going to try you in our courts, but also we are going to take over your civil service. We shall be in charge of it. We shall be in charge of agriculture. We shall be in charge of construction, because you know, it's militarizing the state. It's not a good approach to building a stable society, because part of the problem I think we are getting, why you get all these youth and politicians getting tempted to also have like quasi-militias, you know, it's because people are beginning to feel that unless I have some sort of military backing of my own, I'm not going to have any seat at the table. So that is why those imitations, if today I listen to Kanu and I say, hey, he's very powerful, he can have his way. The CDF can do whatever he wants because he is a soldier, he's a decorated soldier. Then tomorrow I will start imitating him. I will say, okay, maybe if I also put on my uniform and start saying, I have my small group, I can be listened to. And that is how you get countries with developing militia groups that can cause a breakdown in society. So I think it's important for the commander-in-chief, for the people who run the defense forces, to appreciate that there is a need to give better respect to civilian authority.
Thank you very much. Honorable Segona.
So it's Chris after me. I have a lot to say, but I wanted to donate 30 seconds of my time to Chris Magezi to tell me about what the army establishment has done to General Muhoozi Kainerugaba for insulting a senior army officer, Erweru, by calling him a buffoon, for engaging in partisan politics and threatening to kill Kyagulanyi, and for promoting partisan politics by promoting his father as the next candidate. While I want to give my close remarks, I am more interested in that because he said he will come to it, and we are coming to the end of this program.
Thank you very much, and I'm grateful for your 30 seconds. Although I'm not sure how much I can say in 30 seconds, but I'll make 2 points. That this law, which has been passed, in the broader scheme of things, is a very good law for the people of Uganda. It simply affirms the status quo, and the status quo has been peace throughout the country. Number two, the only people who have to be worried about this law are the criminals, the violent armed criminals. Those ones have to be very worried, wherever they are.
Return my seconds. You have not, you have not used them.
Number three,
I want to return them.
Okay. Number three, the amended law has addressed all the concerns that were raised by the Supreme Court, and particularly the lead judge, the Chief Justice. I have no reason to doubt they have been sufficiently addressed, and going forward, we will dispense justice even better. So much so that even those who find themselves under the court-martial, it is not the end of the world. There is an appellate process. If you are not satisfied with the decisions of the General Court-Martial, for instance, you can appeal to the Court of Appeal, which is an entirely civilian court. And if you are also not satisfied with the Court of Appeal, you can go to the Supreme Court. So what is the problem? Initially, yes, if you are caught on any of those charges that can be tried under the court-martial in UPDF, you appear under the court-martial. But if you are not satisfied, like has been happening every day, you can appeal.
Okay.
And if the defects are found in the decision of that court, then the higher court, this time an entirely civilian court, will deliver justice. So what is the problem? Number three, my appeal is to, again, our people. Let us avoid this creeping culture of militancy. Let us avoid intimidation, especially against those we don't agree with. We are not against we are not against any political party. They can go and participate in politics as they should. But nobody should take it upon themselves to intimidate others through coercion because they do not agree with their position. Let people be free to support whatever cause or belief they have without undue pressure from external forces, as has been happening now. And I again emphasize, especially around Kampala and surrounding areas. The rest of the country is really peaceful.
Would you like to use his 30 seconds?
He has raised several issues about...
they're around one person, really?
Yes, the CDF. But the same CDF has, like a buffoon, every day people are on airwaves, even on television shows like this, insulting the president. They have called him worse. Who among them has been arrested for that? There are very many. So if someone
the president
says,
abusing them.
If someone says you are this and that, but if it doesn't take anything away from you, what is the issue? I think
that's discipline.
No, you can interpret it in any way you want, but I don't see much.
I still want you on that job,
I don't see much offense or something to worry too much about something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Allow me end with Honorable Kajwenge.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nyangwe. So when this law was...
Is that how you're returning my
Now I'm going to bring them here.
When this law was presented to Parliament, as a person representing the people of Nyabushozi,
yes,
I was looking at what I can do for my people, for the heroes who fought for this country and came out maimed. They shed their blood. They have been there in the constituency, my constituency, and been looking forward to also enjoy the benefits. I am happy that at the end of it all, by close of business yesterday, Parliament had enacted a law that caters for their medical care, that caters for their disability allowances, not only disability allowances, but also for the caretakers, but also for their pension. And once that was achieved, I came to the two clauses of 29 and 30 that talk about the ability for the army to discipline itself without outsourcing. Once that is done, I am home and dry.
Okay. Honorable Segona, your last comment.
No, I can only say to our army, it pays to do good. It pays to be disciplined. In fact, I don't know, ordinarily, if these people were disciplined, would not even need a law. Because even with the law, quite a number of them choose to be indisciplined. I have forgiven Chris Magezi for refusing, neglecting, and declining to answer the question I raised because he needs this job. But to me, that goes to the core of the destruction our country has endured.
Okay.
To Ugandans, do not curse us. We are still fighting. To the Honorable Kajwenge and the group, what you fed on to Ugandans is like boiling a lot of meat, put in some few pieces of pork. You tell a Muslim, don't touch the pork, you go for the other one. Indeed, I agree with him. He has reason to be embarrassed. That's why, you see, they don't want to talk about the two clauses because they know how bad the job was. Yeah. Those were 3 nights wasted. I am at pain that I tried to help this country. And my colleagues who are more in number decided to destroy the effort. we will go back and fight these two clauses.
Okay. Thank you.